don't pick that life picked you. Welcome to Sit Down News, and before I begin, I'd like to mention our sponsor. Ratchet is a clothing company from the UK started by a young man with a vision, a dream, and determination. They have various prints and styles for men, women, and children. I'll include a link to their website down below in the description for this video. I hope everyone's enjoying their day so far. Before we begin, let me give a little background. To begin with, Chin Gigante and John Gotti were both bosses, one representing the Genovese family and the other the Gambinos. But more than anything else, two extremely different kinds of bosses, as you could see by the media photos. Chin Gigante hailed from Manhattan. During his younger days, he boxed professionally, and in time, he became the protege of Vito Genovese. Sometime around the mid-50s, he was inducted into the Genovese family. He quickly was bumped up to a captain's position, and by 1981, Chin was the official boss of the family. But in an attempt to insulate himself, he had law enforcement and the public believe Fat Tony Salerno was the guy. By the 90s, Chin was under several federal indictments. Ultimately, he was convicted, and in 1997, he received a 12-year sentence. In 2002, he was indicted again, but pled guilty this time, and in April of 2003, he had an additional 3 years added to his time. Chin Gigante passed away on December 19, 2005, at the Medical Center in Springfield, Missouri. He was 77 years old. John Gotti was Bronx-born, but grew up in the East New York section of Brooklyn. Growing up, his mentor was Carmine Fatico, a Gambino captain. Sometime in 1977, Gotti became an inducted member. He immediately moved into an acting captain position and soon became the captain of the Bergen crew. At this time, he was being mentored by Neil Della Croce, the Gambino underboss. By 1985, John Gotti became the official boss of the Gambino family. He would be under several indictments throughout the years, managing to avoid all convictions. That is until his 1990 RICO indictment. Gotti was convicted on April 2, 1992, and by June he received a life sentence. On June 10, 2002, John Gotti died, and ironically, it was in the same facility as Chin Gigante. So as I mentioned, you have two different kinds of bosses, very opposite of one another. You had Chin Gigante, who wandered around the streets in a bathrobe. There's stories about him actually pulling down his pants and pissing all over the sidewalk. He was going over to parking meters and having a whole conversation with parking meters. He did a good job at what he was trying to do. Chin Gigante tried basically to stay away from the view of law enforcement, but knowing he was always under surveillance, he had a few tricks up his sleeve. Conversely, you had John Gotti that really didn't care if law enforcement was following him, or the media for that sake. But what is a reality is, while John Gotti got attention from the media as a mob boss, that guy in the bathrobe was respected and feared throughout the mob. You know, in that life, you'd rather be labeled an oddfather, as Gigante was, as opposed to a Teflon Don, a name that only incites law enforcement to come after you. It's a well-known fact that after the Castellano hit, Chin Gigante tried to have John Gotti killed several times. And although he didn't like him, Cosa Nostra still goes on, and the commission still exists. So like him or not, Chin still had to meet with him several times. And we're going to focus on two of those conversations that they had when they did meet. The first conversation is when John Gotti proudly tells Chin that his son, John Jr., is now a friend, an inducted member in his family. And Chin's response is not to congratulate him. What he does tell him is, gee, I'm sorry to hear that, because he was against bringing his own sons into that life. Presently, they are both members of the life, but not while he was alive. He wouldn't allow that. And let me just say that when Chin tells him, gee, I'm sorry to hear that, that's what we would call in that life or in the street as throwing him a zinger. Chin basically insulted him by telling him that. And what was John Gotti going to do? Start an argument with him? He knew he was right. In the second conversation, I'm a little surprised that John Gotti said what he said, But let's get into it. John Gotti basically brought up to Chin that he wasn't making new members. He wasn't filling the vacancies for membership. So for some reason at that time, Chin wasn't straightening guys out in his family. And that's his prerogative as a boss. Gotti then further stated that he had hoped the new members would feel indebted to him because he was now pushing for Genovese associates to get straightened out. So Chin explained that he wasn't ready to make those kind of moves within his family. That was a polite way of telling Gotti to mind his business. But then he asked Gotti a loaded question. And this is where an old-time boss's mentality comes into play. This next question shows the difference between Chin and John Gotti. He then asks him, why should I have to make men for you to respect them? And here's the loaded part of the question. He tells him, if they're with me, you would respect them, no? And Gotti replies, of course. And he has to answer that way because if he respects Chin, he would respect anybody that's with Chin. An old timer like Chin that's been around for a long time, made his way up through the ranks as boss, will put you in a trick bag quickly just by questioning you, just by asking you one question. And I believe out of all the guys in the mob that John Gotti spoke to, he knew he had to be on his toes whenever he was in front of Chin. In a final analysis, and to further distinguish these two different types of bosses, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but to this day, I have yet to see a single photo of Chin Gigante posing in prison. Conversely, I thank everyone for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, you can hit the like button if you want, and I appreciate everyone who has. Ciao. You can subscribe to the Sit Down News blog at sitdownnews.com, and I appreciate everyone who has subscribed. Thank you. Well, just another example in the mob you never knew about. Hope you enjoyed the story. If you would like to subscribe to this channel, you can do so down below. If you would like to subscribe to my other channel, Unlimited Substance Podcast, I'll add a link in the description to this video.